Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. I try to do these videos while I have natural sunlight, which this is the closest thing I can get to that because it's gonna be dark out in like half an hour and it's not even that late. And I'll probably go to the library and work from there because that's usually what I do. Okay, so I had one question from somebody, and this was a Russian person living in the US. And because I feel like this is more relevant to people living in the US who want to come to Finland, I'm gonna do this video in English. Maybe eventually I'd do a translation into Russian. I just don't think it's, again, as relevant. But what I'm gonna explain is that, growing up, my grandfather used to say to me that the Nordic countries have the highest quality of life, like the highest standard of living. And I'm sitting there thinking that, like, oh, cool, then, like, I should go live in them. But I never really thought much more beyond that. And I also was like, what does he mean by higher standard of living? So I'll start off by talking about that a little bit, but also, because I do agree with that 100%. But also the other thing that he said to me is, but they're really strict about immigration and they don't really let people in. And I'm going to also say, I mean, yeah, kind of true, but it's also like when there's a will, there's a way. And also, I know academia is hard for some people. I can't relate because academia is literally the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. I think working is way harder. But if you're very academic, that will really take you places all over the world. And that's why I've not really traveled as much as I have, but why I've lived abroad as much as I have, doing different programs and whatnot, because, it's all been in an effort to further my education. Okay, so what do we mean by higher standard of living? This is a little bit of a side tangent and not really relevant. Let's just start with the fact that everybody has access to basic needs. Everybody has access to housing, warm places, as I talked about in the Airbnb video, despite that it's a cold country. There are just like certain incentives that they do, like with students, like student housing is really cheap, student meals are really cheap. And even if you're not a student, they have a lot of ways that you're able to save money, that you don't have to go out of your way and do a bunch of these weird things like I do in the US, like open bank accounts and close bank accounts and spend a certain amount of money on a credit card in a month. I'm not encouraging spending lots of money on credit cards. I'm just saying these are the ways you save money, quote unquote, in the US. But here it's like you can buy things on discount at the grocery store. If you buy them after a certain hour, it will be more. So there are like a lot of ways that the government incentivizes you to be able to save money if you want to, but it's not like trying to get you to spend more money to do that. Okay, you have access to good public transportation that's very functional, and it's just like the places you live in are like almost always immaculate. Like whenever I'm anywhere else that has a larger population density, all of the buildings are like decrepit, or there's always work that needs to be done. I have like almost never seen that in Finland. I feel like everything is just nice, and it's like, wow, why can't the whole world be like this? Okay, so anyway, how do you get to Finland? Again, it wasn't really something I had in mind necessarily. I thought it'd be cool once upon a time when I was a kid, because one of the things maybe I talked about a little bit here, but could talk about more at some point, is I never really liked being in the US, and I kind of knew that my whole life. And I never liked the stress and the pressure, and sometimes it's really hard for me to understand what of that was societally driven, familially driven, or self-driven. And for me, it's easier being in a society where the stakes are lower and nobody cares as much, and you're not prized and honored for working harder than you need to just to have what you need. And I think that's the dangerous thing about America, but the very not dangerous thing about Finland, because it's really hard to overwork yourself because nobody does it, and it's not really an option to have multiple jobs the way people have 2 or 3 jobs in the US, like myself. So yeah, it's not encouraged the same way it is in the US. In the US, when people are struggling, it's oh, just work harder, and it's why? Literally, we're the wealthiest country in the world. Why are we just going to work harder? All right, so anyway, I'm digressing a lot from the point, but I'm just trying to preface this with why would one choose to move to Finland? And yeah, there are reasons. I was actually thinking the other day, I was man, I wish my whole family just lived in Finland so that I didn't have to just be in Finland alone. Yeah. Okay. And this is another reason, like, I don't want to move out of New Jersey because I'm like, I literally don't like being in the US as it is. And then I would just move away from everybody in the US who, like, actually wants to see me. That makes sense. Okay. So, how do you come here? Education, that's like the best thing I'm going to tell you. So, again, I'm a very academic person, as I just mentioned. And the only other example I've seen of an American who came here, and she was from California, which is way more expensive than New Jersey. I mean, not way, but yeah. I've talked about that in other videos too. And I think she was from like an expensive part too, like San Francisco or near there or something. So what she did was she started learning Finnish, which is cool. I haven't done that, so much, but she came and became like a culinary person, like a pastry chef or something, like literally went to like the ammattikorkeakoulu. It's like it's kind of like the community college equivalent, I guess, of what we'd have in the US. It's like higher education, but not quite a university. So it's the best thing I can compare to, an institute, if you will. And like, this is how she did it. And I don't think she was like a big academia person like me who's like, oh, I'm coming on a Fulbright to do my master's degree. So that's actually really what I would recommend for people is like come for education somehow. There are bachelor's degree programs, and like I'm not even saying that like you necessarily have to be a student age. You don't. You could be like 40 and doing this if you want to. It's totally normal for Finnish people. Also, if you have enough money saved up, it's like not going to be expensive for you. And unfortunately, like this is the way that like you would probably have to integrate into society here because they don't. So unless you're like, somebody coming from Russia or Ukraine and you're an asylum seeker, there's not really like an alternative path for you. Oh, aside from like if you have a spouse who, does that for you and then you just come. And then I don't know what you do after that. Either sit around at home or if you're in the Helsinki area, you could probably get an English speaking job type thing at a cafe or something. But yeah, at some point you'd probably need to learn Finnish to get a job. Again, unless you're highly educated, and then they don't really always care because the working language is English. That's what I'm trying to say. The working language is English, so they like are going to work with their other European counterparts in English anyway. So again, doesn't matter too much. Okay, so I guess that's really the best way I can recommend because then you can get a residence permit and there's all these other cool things like I then got a residence permit that was good for 2 years after I graduated, like a searching for work one. I'm saying searching for work, but I pretty much am still searching for work because I don't get paid for my PhD. And that was kind of one idea I had was if I could do this cool transition to like having a PhD, like pay me and then get benefits from, I wouldn't really say benefits, but like that could possibly be sustainable. But then, I have to give up my higher paying US job, which now that with moving out, I have to pay $2,000 a month of rent. I'm not even really sure I want to keep it because like literally all of it's going to go to rent. Okay. So yes, basically what I'm trying to explain here is that the only path that I can see is either you marry somebody who's going to do education or you yourself do education or if you're very, very entrepreneurial savvy, they do like people to come here and start businesses. What do businesses require? Investments, capital. Do you have that? Can you find somebody to give you that? That's another option. Expanding your own business here, if you already have one in the US. I'm going to say those are like basically your only options. How did I come here on a Fulbright? Originally wanted to go teach English in some random Russian-speaking country to improve my Russian, but then I had people in my life being like, you spent wasting enough time abroad learning how to speak Russian, so you should stop doing that and do something that's actually going to further your career, like get a master's degree. And I was like, okay. So I chose to do that in a highly Russian-speaking area. Yes, that's what I did. So that was the whole La Padranza thing. So yeah, the other thing too is now that like a lot of places, the Finnish government's becoming more, let's say, conservative in its immigration policies. They also do not necessarily want people who are not very educated, who are immigrants, to stay here. And they're trying to make it way harder for immigrants to stay here. So that's another thing. It's like, you kind of do have to like sort of make it in the Finnish sense to like, which just means you pretty much get any job because getting jobs is not easy here. That's why they have a lot of people on unemployment and they have a lot of people sitting around chilling, enjoying life. I remember those days during COVID I had in the US. one of my favorite memories, honestly. Don't get me wrong, it was stressful waking up every day being like, when's this gonna end? I'm kind of bored. I mean, I found ways to entertain myself, but yeah, so you probably will not be unemployed if you're not a Finnish person, but if you are a Finnish person, a little bit different. So I guess that's really everything I could recommend is like you would probably have an easier time looking into an educational program, except the fact that you're going to have to take a pay cut, pay absence really, for a couple of years to build your life in a country that arguably has a higher standard of living. Now, what are the drawbacks of this? The weather is terrible, and if you've never experienced it before, it will make you depressed the first year. I don't think I've met a foreign person who hasn't had that experience. It gets easier after the first year. Like, don't get me wrong, totally. Like, it doesn't even faze me anymore. Like, the fact that it'll be dark out at 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm just used to it now. I wouldn't say I like it, but I'm used to it. Then, you get, like, unlimited sunlight in the summer, which is kind of weird. It makes you, like, sort of spazzy. I mean, it does for me, at least. So, I don't know. That's like literally all I can recommend. And again, this was my own path that I took and the way that I found it to work. So you have to do what works for you, obviously, but this is the best thing that I can recommend just because of like the way that I know that things work here. And I mean, maybe if you're like highly qualified, okay, to be fair, if you're American and speak English and have a U.S. college degree because those are pretty well respected, you might be able to just casually get a job in a Helsinki game. I think I do know one person who did that, but he also has Finnish citizenship and speaks Finnish and joined the Finnish military, and he's from the U.S. So literally one person I can think of. So that case does exist. But yeah, it's about everything I can think of. So anyway, to the one person who sent me a message about this, I hope this answers your question. And if anybody has any other questions about this, let me know, and I hope I can answer them. So other than that, I'm gonna try to record my next video real quick because now it's really dark. Already? It's only 12 past. Oh, it's gonna be pitch black really soon. All right, so until next time, bye.